Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my movie vlog. My name is John Campia, and this is a companion video. Now, every day on the John Campia Show, and of course on Open Mic, we take a lot of live questions from you guys, and quite often we don't have time to get around to all those live questions during the live show. So what I do, to make sure you guys know those questions will get answered, I gather them all together and bring them here and answer them in the companion videos. We got a couple of days of companion videos to get caught up on, so without any further ado, let's dive right into it. And we start off with one that came in from Jack Hamilton, who wrote, what if Justice League Mortal was made? Oh, well, so Justice League Mortal, for those of you who don't know, was the working title at any rate, for a George Miller Justice League film that I think they were looking at like back in 2008. And it had Armie Hammer was going to play, yes, Armie Hammer was going to play Batman. And it had this bonkers, there was a script leak for it a little while ago. And it was a completely bonkers script, like so bonkers, it could have been awesome, and it could have been horrible. Like, I could see it going either way, but it was a ballsy, like balls-to-the-wall kind of gutsy script. It would have been interesting. Now, how would it have changed things if it got made? It really all depends on how the movie did. If the movie was a total train wreck, it would have affected things one way. If the movie was great, it would have launched a DCEU back then, and everything would look completely different right now. But it's impossible to say when we don't know how the movie would have turned out. But I mean, there was a lot of problems going on back then. You know, back then, Christopher Nolan was still having issues. He didn't want the movie made because, you know, he had a Batman going and all that. There's a whole lot of stuff going on at the time. But I mean, how it would have affected history would have affected it. I think it would have affected history less if it had bombed. If it had been great, it could have greatly affected the history of where the DCEU is today and how we understand the nature of comic book movies today. Could have had a huge difference, but we will never know. All right, next one up. Marvin777 writes, I understand that film is subjective, but I don't understand the negativity to Superman exhibiting human reactions to his struggles in Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman. No, I get that too. Like people say, Superman isn't smiling enough. Well, the Superman you saw in the gosh golly, let me get that cat out of your tree for you, ma'am, Superman, he was facing much different things. And when Superman was facing much harder, more difficult things, he was as grim and bleak as Henry Cavill portrayed him when he was facing difficult things. Like when Superman realized he was beaten, like in Superman 2, right? Zod and all that kind of stuff, and he was beaten. That was a very different Superman because he was in different types of circumstances than he was, say, in Superman 1. Or when Lois died in Superman 1, right? Like, that's a different set of circumstances he had. The film just never put Superman in those circumstances. He was in very conflicting circumstances that I believe they portrayed Superman perfectly. But again, as you already mentioned, all film is subjective, so different people will take that different ways. But I'm with you, man. I think they portrayed him and how he handled things and reacted to his circumstances absolutely perfectly, which is why, to me, Man of Steel is in my top 10 favorite comic book films of all time. Marvin follows up. I love Superman Returns, but why is it criticized for not having Superman punch things, while Superman 1 didn't have him punching people either? Well, it's a completely different context. You're talking about films that are separated by 30 or 40 years. Look, the expectations of what people were looking for in comic book movies, which back then was a completely new thing, just the fact that when the first Superman movie came out, the big tagline was, "You'll believe a man can fly." That was the big advertising thing for it. They were looking for different things. Today, or at least when Superman Returns came out, the expectations for what the audience were expecting from a comic book movie had changed. We now expected something different, and that's understandable. When we're talking about a comic book movie, particularly the king of comic book heroes, Superman, it's understandable that a lot of people go into that with an expectation of some action. And when the peak of the action is Superman lifting a plane, then that will leave some people dissatisfied because it's a different era. So it's difficult to compare, Marvin. Like, why weren't people upset about that 35 years ago? Well, because it was 35 years ago, or however much time separated Christopher Reeve's Superman from Superman Returns. It was a long time. But it was a completely different era with different expectations, and the genre was different at the time. It was a brand new genre back then. When Superman Returns, and I like Superman Returns. I'm a fan of Superman Returns. I love Brandon Routh as Superman, but it is understandable that people had different expectations for it, and it was completely reasonable that they went in thinking that there would at least be portions of the film that would give them high action adventure. Superman Returns didn't deliver that. It delivered a lot of very good things, but it probably should have delivered a little bit on action adventure as well, just to make more people happy. King D'Chala writes, I noticed during Thor's ceremony in the first movie when Odin said, Thor, my firstborn child, I think the line is Thor, my firstborn. I don't think he says my firstborn child. I think he says firstborn. I could be wrong about that. Frida gave a look like he was lying. Hela foreshadowing? Well, yeah, I mean, as obviously now we know that he was hiding, like Hela was Odin's dirty little secret that he had tried to seal away. But what I'm wondering is, was really nobody still alive in Asgard? Like, did just nobody remember Hela? Or did Odin cast some kind of spell over everybody in Asgard to make them not remember? How does nobody remember Hela? Like, that is a little bit of a confusing thing to me. But I don't know. I don't think they were, when they made the first Thor movie, I don't think they were thinking about Hela. I think that is a little bit of a retcon, which is explained logically in the movies. So no, I don't personally think it was foreshadowing, but you're not wrong for thinking that it might be. And who knows, maybe someday it'll come out that, yeah, the great Kenneth Branagh, who directed the first Thor movie, maybe he'll come out and say, yeah, we were talking about things like Hela and other things, and down the line this, so we thought we'd throw in this little, who knows, maybe that's the case. I don't think it is, but it might be. Let's see, Aiden Norris writes, thoughts on Love, Simon, one of my favorites so far. I really enjoyed Love, Simon. First of all, it's got Jennifer Garner in it, so I'm always a little bit, and it's got from Transformers, Josh Duhamel. It's got a number of really good players, and what's the name of the kid who plays the lead? Nick Robin? I want to say Nick Robin. Something like that. This is the kid who played the lead in it. You know what's really neat about it? It's just a real human story, is what I appreciate. It's a really nice little film. I enjoyed it. You know, it wasn't going to crack my top 20 of the year or anything like that, but I enjoyed the film. I thought it was a nice little film. Razor's Edge Frisbee, I like that, writes, have you seen the new Doctor Strange hot toy? Might want to rethink Thanos. Well, why does it have to be only one or the other? That's the danger of hot toys. You start thinking, I bought this one. Well, maybe if I just buy one more. And then you think, well, maybe I'll just buy one more. It is a dangerous path. No, I haven't looked at the new Doctor Strange hot toy. I have zero doubt it's probably magnificent to behold. It's probably breathtakingly gorgeous. But yeah, I still want that Thanos one, man. I still want that Thanos one. Let's see. Eric the Red 06 writes, would diehard Star Wars fans rather have George Lucas return and take over Kathleen Kennedy's role instead? Or do they not trust him either? Well, I think the Star Wars fandom is probably split on that. Here's my thoughts on George Lucas. I would personally be fine with him coming back to be the president of Lucasfilm. However, he can't direct another Star Wars movie. Like, I'm sorry, but the prequel showed he's just kind of out of touch. And I've always said this too, despite the fact that I hate the prequels, I've always said this, and I still stand by this. If you break down each of the 3 prequels into a 3-page summary, right? Just a quick little 3-page outline for each film. I think it reads really well. If you just kind of skeleton out the 3 movies, each in like the 3-page synopsis, so 9 pages in total, it probably looks like you got the bones for some great storytelling, great movies. I think where George dropped the ball was insisting to direct them himself. So I'm not against the idea of George coming in and being, the president of Lucasfilm. Here's my fear, though. I wouldn't want George directing any of the movies. And if history is any indicator, like even with Empire and Return of the Jedi, he wasn't the director in name, but he was pretty much running the show. And my fear would be that he would not let the directors just come in and direct. Now, maybe he would. I'm just saying my fear is he wouldn't. That's just my fear. Maybe he would totally let the directors do their thing. In which case, I'm actually okay with the idea of a George Lucas coming back and being the president. He's not going to. I don't think he doesn't want any of that. And I don't blame him one little bit. But if there was some ironclad guarantee that he would not interfere, that he would not direct and he would not interfere with the directors, aside from, setting up the overall picture and giving them their basic guidelines, stay within this, otherwise go. If that's the case and then he stays out of their hair, then I'd be for it. I'd be okay with it personally. I don't think it's the best choice. There are probably many other, Hollywood executives who would probably do a much better job at this point, but I wouldn't be opposed to it, to be honest with you. Let's see. Ben Rayner writes, there's 2 songs from Deadpool I can't get out of my head. OG song. I'm not quite sure what OG song is. 2, a song from another movie that I will never listen to the same way again. I don't know what songs I'll be honest with you, Ben. I'm racking my brain right now. I have no idea which 2 songs you're talking about, so I can't comment. Maurice Cook writes, John, if you was making He-Man or Thundercats movie, would you let Prince Adam say by the power of Grayskull and Lion-O Thunder Ho? Well, it's not Thunder, it's Thundercats Ho. Thunder, 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 Thundercats Ho! That's the proper... Anyway. Or something else. Oh, it would depend on the script. If the script feels like, it wouldn't feel cheesy to have Prince Adam say by the power of Grayskull. If it does, then I just would have him not say it. It's not vitally important. It's not, you could Easter egg it in there somewhere. It's not vitally important. If it feels like the screenplay, this will work and it'll feel comfortable. Go ahead and say it. Sure. But it all depends on the movie. I mean, there's no one blanket answer you can give that because it really all depends on the movie and what kind of tone the movie's taking. So I can't just give a flat, all-encompassing yes or no answer to that. You know what I'm saying? It really all depends on the movie itself. Hector Jeter writes, Happy June, just signed up for your Patreon. Oh, thank you so much, Hector. I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. And thank you to all my Patreon supporters. Warrington Trainspotter 2778 writes, Hey, John, love the show. Thank you so much. I'm a big Star Wars fan and enjoyed Solo, but I would like to see new stories and new worlds and new characters. Do you agree? Well, I mean, come on, Warrington. I mean, I'm always talking about that. You know me. I am always talking about that. That is... Look, as much as I like Solo, and I'm open to the idea of Obi-Wan, sure, and if they do a Boba Fett movie, I'll go see it, and I'll keep an open mind about it. But what I've always been saying all along, what I really want them to do is to expand the Star Wars universe. Stop contracting it and making it a little town of 78 people. Expand the Star Wars universe. It's huge. It's massive. It transcends tens of thousands of worlds and thousands of years of history. Start exploring new stuff. So I've been saying that all the time, man. So yes, clearly, I agree. Ark Lannister 23 writes, Yo, John, sorry to go off topic, but can you tell Anne, by the way, appreciate everybody who mentions Anne. There's no E in Anne. It's just A-N-N. Just so you guys know. Can you tell Anne that they are doing an amazing job at Hasbro? They're killing Marvel Legends figures. Their Marvel Legends figures are killing it. Well, yes, Anne is a brilliant genius. I know that. Hasbro knows that. I don't know if she works. I know she was working on the Marvel stuff. I don't know if she still is. Like, she's constantly switching brands, like which brand she's overseeing and stuff like that. I honestly can't remember off the top of my head if she's even working on Marvel right now. But I will pass along the message that you love what they're doing there. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Recruz writes, John, saw Solo. Honestly, it was a good time. Yeah, Solo's a good film. It's a good film. It doesn't crack the top 3 or top 4 or for me even top 5 best Star Wars film, but it sits very comfortably at number 6 for me. Obviously, there's in the top 3 spots are the original Star Wars trilogy. Then for me, it's The Force Awakens, then Rogue One, then Solo, then The Last Jedi, and then somewhere way down here is the prequels and the Clone Wars crap. But yeah, Solo's a good little movie. It's a good little movie. I really quite enjoy it. It's a good, fun, summer adventure movie, and I thought it worked quite well on that level. Recruz also writes, without trying to give away any spoilers, John, does Solo set up a bigger possible universe with its ending. If I'm going into spoiler territory, I do apologize. Well, that is going into spoiler territory, so I can't elaborate on my answer, except I will say that yes, I do believe they were kind of setting the stage for bigger universe stuff. However, after the financial failings of Solo, I have my doubts that they'll explore it. But who knows? You never know. We'll have to wait and see. I can't go into more detail than that because that would be getting into spoiler territory. Let's see. Matthew Leach writes, Film Rec Coralie Fargeet's Revenge, excellent film. I have never heard of it, Matthew, but thank you for the recommendation. I'm sure there are probably some people who have heard of it, and now they know they should check it out, so thank you for the recommendation. Razor's Edge Frisbee writes, graphic novel recommendations, Justice League Dark Side War Part 1 and 2, and Superman American Alien. I've heard, if it's the same one I'm thinking of, I've heard many, many good things about Superman American Alien. And I should check that out. You know what's funny? Last night, there's a great comic shop. Actually, it's more than just a comic shop. It's a comic and game shop in Burbank called Emerald Knights. And Ann and I swing by there at least once a week. Sometimes not to do anything. Like we went in there the other day. I don't have them on my desk, but both of us went in to buy new sets of D&D dice. Ann bought this amazing, it's cast metal. I think it cost like $50, but she bought these cast metal D&D dice set. It's amazing. I bought a cheap little $11 set. But anyway, most of the time, like last night, we just walked in there just to hang out and walk around and look at the stuff. But I'm often in there looking for good collections. You know, when they take entire storylines into one edition. And I'm going to keep my eye out for Superman American Alien for sure, because you're not the first person who's told me about that, if I'm thinking of the right one. Raccoons writes, John, after watching Avengers again, my buddy and I had a discussion on what was our favorite superhero movie. And because I didn't have The Dark Knight in my top 5, apparently my opinion is wrong. Seriously. Yeah, well, that's just it. I mean, me personally, The Dark Knight is in my top 5. It's actually probably in my top 2 or 3. But, I mean, that's the subject. People have to understand. Like, if anybody ever tells you your opinion is wrong, you need to have a discussion with them about what the subjectivity of film means. Because anybody who tells you that clearly has no clue. They don't have the first idea about the real nature of film, which is it's all subjective. So you got to have that, probably have that conversation with them at some point. Razor's Edge also follows up. What is your opinion on The Exorcism of Emily Rose? One of my top 5 movies of all time, and brilliantly mixes courtroom drama and supernatural horror. Jen Carpenter's performance when she's possessed is bone-chilling in my opinion. And by the way, how good was she in Dexter? How good is she in Dexter? Here's the thing about The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I think it's a very good movie. It's, for me personally, it's not even in the same neighborhood as some of my favorite films of all time, but it's a very good movie. The really interesting thing about it is it's really the movie that got Scott Derrickson the gig, if you will, to do Doctor Strange. Yeah, he did. Oh crap! What was the one he did with Handsome Hawk? Was, oh, now I got to look it up. What was the name of that movie he did with Handsome Hawk? It was Sinister. Sorry, he did Sinister with Handsome Hawk, and that's great. But really, the film that got him Doctor Strange was The Exorcism of Emily Rose. That was his calling card. That made Kevin Feige go, I want to work with this guy. This guy would be really good fit for something like a Doctor Strange. That's the movie that did it, that got him on Doctor Strange. So, yeah, real solid little film, and enjoy quite a bit. And just a little bit of interesting trivia. It's really the movie that got him Doctor Strange. All right, let's move on here. Next one comes to us from Gabe Campbell, who writes, I remember hearing talks a few years ago about the Roger Rabbit sequel, but all that stopped when Bob Hoskins sadly passed away. Do you think it will ever happen, or a remake or a reboot in a couple of years? Honestly, I don't think so. Roger Rabbit is not something that has transcended generations. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that. I could be completely wrong about that. Off the top of my head, it seems like, you know, not everybody talks about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. There's some of us who remember it fondly. It was such a unique, different type of film, especially for its time. But I honestly don't know that another Roger Rabbit movie would do very well at all. I don't know that you can make a really good business case for doing a Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So I'm going to go ahead and guess. I've never heard anything about it, like really going, especially in the last couple of years. I can't see there being a good business case for it. So I'm going to guess that I don't think the chances are good that we're ever probably going to see one, honestly. If they did one, I'd be curious about it. But honestly, I think curious would be the most you're going to get from the general audience. I really don't think it would get a lot of buzz going. I just don't see it exciting people. Could be wrong. Could be totally wrong. But that's just, if you're asking me, that's kind of how I see that off the top of my head. Okay, let's see here. Edgar Mangana writes, how do you think Equalizer 2 will do at the box office? Well, not great. It won't do great. Like the first one, let's see. The Equalizer box office. The first one I know did not do great. Yeah, the first one in total, it made under $200 million worldwide, which is not awful. I mean, that's not awful for a film that had like a $55 million budget. So it's not awful, but it's clearly no blockbuster. I don't see why there would be any expectation that it would do much better. So I'm thinking the upper limit for an Equalizer 2, my guess is upper ceiling $260, $270 million worldwide. I think that's going to be its upper limit. So if it can get up to there, they'll be happy. But honestly, I probably see it coming in closer to the probably 220 million range is where I think it'll come in. I hope I'm wrong, because I'm telling you, I love the first one. I thought what Antoine Fuqua and Denzel Washington did in that movie was awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I almost liked that Equalizer movie, almost, as much as I liked the first John Wick movie. I certainly liked it more than the second John Wick movie. But I almost liked it as much as the first John Wick movie. That's how much I like that first Equalizer. I think it's great, so I'm very excited about it. And I think the trailers have been really good. Not the best trailers, but I think they've been very good trailers, kind of showcasing what you can expect to get out of this new Equalizer film. So I'm looking forward to it, but I don't expect it to do gangbusters at the box office. Let's see here. The 510 Zone writes, hey, John, you mentioned that Anne was a huge fan of Tom Hanks, massive fan of Tom Hanks, and Big. In the movie, he became an advisor to a toy company. Would you say that the movie influenced her to venture into her current occupation? You know, I still remember, because before Anne was working for Hasbro, she was a political field rep for a congresswoman. And she was she was doing the political field rep stuff for her. And she was looking after healthcare reform and stuff like that. And then she because of that, she got a job in a healthcare company, this big job in this healthcare company. And she wasn't really happy there. I mean, it was a good job, and she liked the people she worked with, but, you know, she wasn't really satisfied there. And then this opportunity came up out of nowhere to oversee projects for Hasbro. And I remember her and I talking about it, about whether or not that would be a good move for her, whether it's the type of job she'd be happy in, and blah, blah, blah. And the idea of working in toy is great. But yes, Big came up in a couple of those conversations. Look, I'm not saying that if it wasn't for Big, Anne wouldn't have taken her job at Hasbro. I'm certainly not saying that at all. But when we, as, you know, a family, were talking together about what would be best for her and, you know, where she'd like to go and what would work for her, what would be pros and cons and blah, blah, blah. And my job as her husband is just help her sort through all those thoughts herself. Yeah, I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that the topic of Big didn't at least come up a couple of times. So I don't know how big of an influence was there, but yeah, I'll just let you know, it was definitely part of the conversations. Nathaniel Scott writes, Kathleen Kennedy vid, what things would you have loved to hear from her if she had made some kind of fan address in response to the divide and toxicity? Yeah, so one of the things that I mentioned in my video about Kathleen Kennedy, and, you know, I believe Kathleen Kennedy should step down. I think it would be best for her, and she can continue to do brilliant things in Hollywood like she's done her whole career. And I think it might be best for the Star Wars community right now. But my reasons for thinking she should step down are very different from a lot of other people's reasons. But whatever. One of the things that I said that kind of pushed me over the edge, because you guys know I have been highly, what's the word I'm looking for? Let's just say I've highly questioned the nature and the handling of the director situation this whole time. Like, you go back, every time one of those director situations happened and the creative differences, look back on any one of the shows that I've done over the years, and I would like say almost every time, why the hell are there creative differences now? How do you not know whether you've got creative differences before you hire them? How do you not make 100% sure that you are all completely on the same page before hiring them and announcing to the world that they're going to be directing a Star Wars movie, and then you find out a few months later or a couple years later, oh, turns out we had completely different ideas. Like, I've always been critical of that. I've always been critical about the way Lucasfilm right now continues to shrink the Star Wars universe instead of expanding it, all that kind of stuff. But I've always, never said that all that stuff put together was enough for me to think that Kathleen Kennedy should step down. For me, though, ever since The Last Jedi, I have been waiting quietly and patiently for Kathleen Kennedy to lead. Because this isn't just any other property or any other film studio or whatever. This is Lucasfilm. This is Star Wars. And I believe that the president of Lucasfilm needs to lead. Not just their company, but they need to take the lead for the fan community as well. Not be like a religious figurehead, but take some leadership. And in the midst of the most brutal divide we've seen, some for perfectly legitimate reasons, some for not so legitimate reasons. We've talked about that a lot. But in the midst of this huge divide, which has been happening under her watch, I, as a fan of Kathleen Kennedy and as a fan of Star Wars, and as somebody who was a fan of the Star Wars fan community, have sat very frustrated watching Kathleen Kennedy do nothing and say nothing. Not even try to show some leadership. And that to me has been the frustrating thing. And finally, as we get 6 months in, and I'm realizing she has still said nothing. Not even tried to bridge the gap or whatever. That's been frustrating to me. Now, what would I have liked to have seen her done? Well, I don't have the answers because I'm not the president of Lucasfilm. That's why I don't get paid however many millions of dollars a year that the president of Lucasfilm and their entire staff that they have working for them, top-notch, brilliant people to work with you, a top-notch, brilliant person. That's not my responsibility to come up. But anything. I would have loved to have seen her try anything. Like, maybe do something simple, like say, hey, all you guys, and this is true, by the way, there's this Nike campaign, The Force is Female, right? There's this Nike campaign. So she wore the t-shirt once. And there's this false narrative that there's a whole bunch of people out there who act like Kathleen Kennedy's mantra is The Force is Female. She wore a shirt once, right? So at least come out and say, hey, look, I just want to address, you guys are going to have your feelings about this one way or the other, and I understand, but I want to address this one issue. There seems to be this false story going around that to me, the Force is Female is a way of life. It's a mantra. No, it's this little slogan thing that I just showed some support for. And go read Nike's page if you want to know more about what it's for or something. Like, at least address that. Or, I don't know, do something extreme. Maybe it would have been stupid, but do something extreme and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to hold a Star Wars fandom summit where I'm going to get me as the president of Lucasfilm. I'm going to get me. I'm going to get Pablo Hidalgo. I'm going to ask George Lucas himself to come on down, back down to Skywalker Ranch for a couple of days to participate. I'm going to invite Alan Horn from Disney in. I'm going to get John Knoll, who's been a huge presence in the Star Wars universe forever. I'm going to get these people, and I want to get like 15 big online voices of people who love Star Wars, and then make those 15 or 20 people a mixture of people who really liked and a mixture of people who really hated, like The Last Jedi, right? And just say, I'm going to have this like 2-day summit at Lucasfilm. So we all can get together, sit down and dialogue as the studio and as the fans. We're going to sit down and dialogue for like 1 or 2 hours one day and 1 or 2 hours the next day, and see if we can get a better understanding of where both sides are coming from. You know, blah, blah. I mean, that's extreme. Yes, I admit that's extreme, and maybe that type of an idea would have 1,000 different problems as well. But it would have been something. It would have been something to try. What you can't do, though, is nothing. And that's been the part that has saddened me and frustrated me the most, is that the president of Lucasfilm right now is showing no leadership. Maybe she's showing leadership to the corporate community, but as the president of Lucasfilm, it may not be written in your job description, but you need to take some leadership for the community. You don't have to be the leader, but show some leadership. And I think that's saddened me the most. So what would I have wanted her to say? Anything. Even if she said something stupid and failed, fine. At least she showed some leadership and tried. Silence is not trying, and silence is not the answer here. It's only made things worse. And who knows? You know what? I'll tell you what. If anybody from Lucasfilm is watching this, I will help. All right? Because I know a lot of people in the Star Wars fan community that are both love, and if I don't know them personally, I know of them very well, and they would know who I am, and I can reach out to those people. And I know a lot of people who hate the current, direction of the films and don't like The Last Jedi. And if I don't know them personally, I know some of them personally. And if I don't know some of them personally, they certainly know who I am. I will help. I will reach out. I will set this up. Plan like even just one afternoon, like one 90-minute lunch at Skywalker Ranch or in Los Angeles, whatever. Let's fly some people, get like 20 people that represent people who love the originals, who love the prequels, who don't like the prequels, who love the new films, who don't like the new films, but all who consider themselves Star Wars fan. I will set it up and get everybody together with Kathleen Kennedy, with Pablo Hidalgo, with 5 or 6 other Lucasfilm people, and sit down and just dialogue. And you know what? Even if nothing works, and even if nothing comes out of that, it was at least trying something. And some really great things could come out of it. Better understanding of the different points of view. Maybe, I don't know, but maybe something good could happen. But instead we've seen nothing, and that is frustrating. That's frustrating to me as a fan of Star Wars and a fan of Kathleen Kennedy. It's been frustrating for me as a fan of Kathleen Kennedy to see nothing. So anyway, I've harped on that long enough. We need to move on here, guys. Let's see. Blue News Podcast writes, I bet there will be a Waynes have new baby Easter egg in Wonder Woman 84. No, you can't, because that would break canon. Bruce Wayne would already be about 12, 13, or 14 years old in 1984 in the current canon. So no, Waynes have new baby? No. You might be able to say, have an Easter egg in a newspaper that says, prominent Gotham socialites Thomas and Martha Wayne killed in brutal mugging, survived by their son Bruce Wayne. You could have that. But it doesn't, because if he was just born in 84, that would mean Bruce Wayne's Batman is what? He would be 10, 20, about 33 or 34 years old. This is supposed to be a Batman in his mid-40s or later 40s, right? So the timeline doesn't add up. But you can have an Easter egg that says, Wayne's murdered in alley. You could do that. You could do that. ZCM Zombie writes, bring them the business. Now that's a t-shirt. So that comes from a show the other day where I was talking about, people are saying, hey, if I use my Cinemia or my MoviePass card, my movie theater is saying they won't give me rewards points. And I'm like, hey, use the kiosks, use the online thing, whichever your card lets you do. And all they know is that it's a MasterCard. And you shouldn't feel bad about circumventing their rules that way, because you are bringing them the business. They're getting full purchase price for those movie tickets. You are bringing them that business. You're damn right you should be getting those reward points too. And so I kept on saying, you are bringing them the business. Bring the business. You are bringing them the business. So I don't know, maybe that'll become a new t-shirt, ZCM. Big Vic 5BN writes, thoughts on MoviePass latest news? I don't know what the latest news is. So you could be talking about 5 or 6 different things, Big Vic. So next time I need to be a little bit more specific, because I don't know what latest news you're referring to. I've talked a lot about MoviePass over the past couple of months, and frequently about every new major development. I've talked about that, but I don't know which one in particular you're talking about here, so I apologize for that. Let's see. Murray Reich writes, I guess that's where Hawkeye was during Infinity War, playing tag. Yep, and it's funny, a lot of people have been writing that in. Playing tag and playing it well. I like tag. We can't put out my full review till, I believe, the 14th. But tag, I'll tell you what I said in my tweet. It's a fun, funny movie. I think most people are gonna enjoy it at any rate. Rohit Mukundan writes, just for fun, first to Best Picture, MCU or Star Wars? I'll probably go Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars has at least been a Star Wars film has been nominated for Best Picture before. So there's that. So strictly on that basis, I will say Star Wars would be the first. I don't know that either one of them will ever win a Best Picture award, but since a Star Wars film has already been nominated by the Academy once for Best Picture, I'll say that gives them the edge. Although I really don't know that either MCU or Star Wars are ever going to win Best Picture. John Hine writes, do you really think the toxic part of the fan base will be at Star Wars Celebration? I want you to go. Or is your decision set in stone? My decision's set in stone. I'm over the Star Wars fandom. I am still a big Star Wars fan, but my whole experience with all the toxicity just kind of turned me off it. So I don't want to harp on that, but since you asked, I'm letting you know. So no, I don't have any intention of being at Star Wars Celebration, which really sucks because I loved Star Wars Orlando. Loved Star Wars Orlando. And I think many of you who go to Star Wars Celebration Chicago will probably have a great time. And I encourage it. Like, I may not be going, but I would encourage people to go. If you're a Star Wars fan, you want to go check it out, I would highly encourage you to go. I really would, because I had a blast at Star Wars Celebration Orlando. IB Trumpet 513 writes, without saying as long as it's a good producer, I don't care. If you were Bob Iger, who would you choose to replace Kathleen Kennedy at Lucasfilm? I don't care. Sorry, I don't care. But here's the thing. It needs to be an executive. This is an executive role. That's why I apologize, but I can't help but roll my eyes at people when they go, let's give it to Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni doesn't know the first thing about being a movie executive. He doesn't know the first thing about it. He's also never once made a live action film. You want to put a guy who has never made a live action film, has absolutely zero executive experience, and you want to make that guy the head executive of a live action movie studio? I'm sorry, but that's nonsense. It's nonsense. Elevate Dave Filoni, give him a higher position where he has more direct influence over the overall, maybe make him the head of the story group. Maybe do that. Maybe make Dave Filoni head of the story group at Star Wars. Maybe do that. That plays into what his talents are. But you don't go out when you have the top executive position at the company, a company that makes live action films. They do some animation too, but they're primarily a live action film company. And our best idea is a dude who has never made a live action film and has zero executive experience? Come on. No, seriously, just take a breath. I know you know Dave Filoni, so that you instantly go for what you think you know, but come on, stop. Take a breath for a second. Really think about that for a minute. Think about that for a minute. It's not the right job. It's not the right role. Like I said, promote him to like head of story group, where he maybe only reports to whoever the new president is, make him the head of story group, then maybe make him a vice president. Then after he's got some more experience, maybe make him a senior vice president. And then maybe in 10 or 15 years, then you make him president of Lucasfilm. Maybe you groom him for 10 years or so, and then you make him president when he actually knows what he's doing. Right now, when it comes to running a company, he wouldn't have the first sweet lick clue. He just wouldn't. And it boggles my mind how some people think that these huge jobs anybody can do. Oh, anybody can do that. Dave Filoni made a cartoon I like. Make him president of Lucasfilm. Anybody can be the chief executive of a company. That's not how it works. That's not reality. You might be able to point out a few 1 in 1,000 examples where maybe something like that worked out. Sure, there's exceptions to every rule. But you don't, when you're trying to build something successful, you don't try to do the exception to the rule. You try to make smart decisions. I think a smart decision here would be to get a really good film executive, somebody who's had good experience, somebody who has built something, somebody who has worked with a Kevin Feige, somebody who has worked with a Steven Spielberg, somebody who has worked something like, whatever, something like that. And then, make them the head of Lucasfilm. Elevate, if you're really happy, if you think Dave Filoni knows the Star Wars universe as well as anybody else, then you elevate him to something like a part of or the head of the story group. Give him a new title, like a vice president title. Let him learn what it means to be an executive. Let him direct a live action film somewhere in the next 5 or 6 years. Then maybe a little bit later on, you make him a senior vice president, and then you make him a president of a company. Now, before any of you go, well, George Lucas liked him and trusted him. Guess what? Guess who personally handpicked Kathleen Kennedy to be the head of Lucasfilm? George Lucas. So don't throw this, well, George liked Dave and trusted Dave. Well, he also handpicked Kathleen Kennedy to be the president of Lucasfilm. So do you really want to use that as an argument? Anyway, so I think there's a path for a Dave Filoni to become a head of Lucasfilm, but I think it's probably more like 10 to 15 years down the road. Start working on it now. Start working on that path now. But you need an executive, not a producer. Maybe somebody who has producing background, yes, but you need an executive, and it's probably a name that none of us know. Because we don't know 90% of the great executives in Hollywood, because that's not the sexy role. The sexy role is the directors and the producers. Those are the names we know, but those aren't the names we need. We need a smart, good movie executive who has a good vision for the future, is on the same page with Alan Horn and Bob Iger, and then can build a leadership around them as well. And maybe that can include a Dave Filoni and build up to it later on. So anyway, that's just how I kind of see that. Let's see. Murray Reich writes, there was a report I saw that a short list of actors to play the role for Willy Wonka include Ezra Miller, Ryan Gosling, and Donald Glover. Thoughts? I don't believe the report, to be honest with you. It could be valid. I don't think it's real. Matthew Carrera writes, John, Upgrade is incredible. In my opinion, the second best movie of the year behind A Quiet Place. I have had another person, Matthew, tell me the exact same thing. I have, again, not seen Upgrade yet. I obviously have had stuff with my mother and things over the weekend that happened. And then Monday I had to see, what did I see Monday? I saw Tag on Monday. I saw Jurassic World on Tuesday. Tonight, I got to go see Ocean's 8 because I haven't seen Ocean's 8 yet and it's opening and I need to review it. So I need to go see that tonight. So maybe tomorrow, maybe Thursday, I'll finally get a chance to see it. And everybody keeps telling me about how great Upgrade is. I can't wait to watch it. Dakota Barber writes, was reading info about footage of Glass shown at CinemaCon. Yeah, they played a bunch of footage at CinemaCon, which is why I love going to CinemaCon every year and it kills me that I didn't go this year. Anyway, and I heard good things about it. Shown at CinemaCon and it sounds great. I hope it turns out as such, as I love Split and Unbreakable both. Well, who knows? Which M. Night Shyamalan are we going to get? Are we going to get the M. Night Shyamalan that gave us Sixth Sense and Unbreakable? Or are we going to get the M. Night Shyamalan who gave us Lady in the Water and Dude, Where's My Tree? Movie about the trees killing everybody. which M. Night are we going to get? And I'm watching because I very much like Unbreakable. I very much like Split. I didn't love Split. Like I thought the first 2 acts were okay. We're good. We're okay. And then the third act is where it got really, particularly near the end of the film, is where it really gets interesting, right? But I've got my fingers crossed, but everything I have heard so far has been quite positive. So we've got that to rely on. So here's hoping it turns out as good as it can. Henry Stevens writes, to me, Solo doomed to fail purely because of the $250 million budget. Shame was a pure, great, fun movie. All my best. Well, honestly, I keep hearing that number 250 million thrown around a lot. Honestly, from what I've heard, it's the real number is probably closer to 300 million. After you take all the reshoots into account and all that kind of stuff, from what I have heard is that the real number is probably closer to 300. Like the official line that's being given is 250 million, and maybe that's true. I'm just saying that I have heard that the real number is closer to 300 million, which makes it even worse. So yeah, it is unfortunate. It's unfortunate for sure. Because you're right. It's a good movie. I like that movie, man. I've seen it 3 times. I'm just dying to go watch it again. Razor's Edge Frisbee writes, Thanos' theme music after he comes through the portal in Wakanda and walks towards everyone is dark. Reminds me of the score during Logan versus X-24. And you know what the funny thing is? I didn't notice it much because I was so immersed in the scene. And part of the music's job is to get you immersed in the scene. But it did such a good job that I didn't even notice it. I didn't even notice music because everything about the scene, including the music, got me as an audience member so enveloped just in what was happening that I didn't even realize or pay much attention to the music itself. That is a great sign that the music is really doing its job, by the way. And it got me completely sucked into the film. But I can't remember it off the top of my head. But it's a neat comparison, the way you're comparing it to the Logan versus X-24 thing. That's a neat comparison. Next time I watch the movie, I'll have to keep an eye open for that. Let's see. Oz Kabat writes, if Bumblebee isn't too linked to the Bay Transformers films, would they move forward with it as a reboot? Well, first of all, I don't see how or why you start a rebooted universe with a standalone Bumblebee movie. That doesn't seem to make any sense. Also, from the design and the character's voice and everything, I think it's pretty clear this is the same Bumblebee. And Starscream looked like Starscream. So, look, anything is possible. Anything's possible. But it does not feel to me, and they would have said something. If this was a new vision of the Transformers story, they would have put that in the marketing. Clearly, this is the same Bumblebee that we had before. So I just don't think it's what they're doing. But just because I don't think that's what they're doing doesn't mean it's not. I mean, maybe it is. Let's keep our eyes open for that. And you, by the way, Oskabat, you're not the only one thinking that. I've had a conversation with a couple of people who thought that might be something that they could do. And maybe it is. I just have a hard time seeing it right now. That's all. All right. Jamie Hutchison writes, have you seen the second trailer to Mortal Engines? Yes, I have. And I will be talking about it a little bit later today on the John Campea show. So make sure so I don't want to have to repeat myself. So come back and watch it then. We're going to go into it a little bit more on the John Campea show a little bit later. Holy Jabibas writes, which movie requires the viewing of more superhero movies to fully appreciate it? Infinity War or Deadpool 2? Well, neither if you just said to appreciate it. But you put that word fully in there. Putting the word fully in there for fully appreciate it, that changes the scenario a little bit. So understanding the question that which one, blah, 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 requires to fully appreciate, I'll say the MCU. I'll say Infinity War does. I think anybody can just sit down and watch Infinity War and just watch it as a standalone movie. However, you're going to get a lot more out of the movie if you've seen a bunch of the other MCU films. And on that level, I'll go with Infinity War. Good question, man. Ninjatrocity TV writes, Avengers 4 is doing a reshoot in the summer. Do you think they'll throw in new characters in there for a cameo / Easter egg or something, possibly X-Men and Fantastic Four? No. Just get that out of your head right now. The X-Men and Fantastic Four do not belong to Disney. And they will not belong to Disney until at least 2019. So no, there are not going to be X-Men or Fantastic Four cameos. All right? They can't. They just can't. And then what do you do? Like, first of all, there's very real possibility here. Disney doesn't even get the rights in 2019. They could go to Comcast. And there's a vote happening late in July, after which the reshoots will be done by then. So what do you do if you're Marvel? You're going to sink, $70 million into reworking your movie and shooting these cameos of these X-Men characters only to go, Comcast got them. Well, that's $70 million we just wasted. So no, they don't have the rights. And if they did that, that would scream collusion. And the government would go, bang. And you have to be Disney and Fox if they want this deal to work. And even if the Fox shareholders do vote to go with Disney, and they may not, the Fox shareholders may vote to go with Comcast because Comcast is offering more cash. I've been hearing this ridiculous argument lately that, yeah, Comcast is offering more cash, but Disney is offering to pay it in stock, and stock could go up. Well, if the Fox shareholders want Disney stock, they'll just take the money from Comcast, buy those shares in Disney, and still have money left over. It's not rocket science. Anyway, but if Disney and Fox, even they do want this deal to go through, they have to follow everything 100% properly. And because you know what will happen? If they started planning doing reshoots with these X-Men and Fantastic Four characters, Comcast can just instantly go to the government and say, that's collusion. That's unfair trade practices. They should be fined and sued. Their deal should be killed, blah, 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 blah. You can't do that. You have to be completely above board. And that's why Kevin Feige has said, look, I'm not even going to think about X-Men or Fantastic Four or Deadpool until after this deal is done. I'm not even going to begin to think about it until the deal is done. And that's not going to be till sometime in 2019. So no, they are not going to be shooting X-Men or Fantastic Four cameos. Now watch, they're going to shoot the cameos. But no, there's just too much legal problems with it. You can't do it. Matthew Leach writes, breaking, Jared Leto getting his own Joker film. Yep, and I will be talking about that on the John Campea show a little bit later this morning. Make sure you tune in. Sclera Comic writes, Bumblebee gave me a Shape of Water feeling. Really? Well, I mean, the marketing had like a somber tone. I hope you don't mean it gave you the feeling like Bumblebee's going to have sex with a girl or anything like that, like happened in The Shape of Water. But I guess if you're talking in terms of like a somber tone, yeah, I could see that. Let's see. The Geek Buzz writes, hey, John, greetings from Quebec City. I love Quebec City. We love you here, man. Oh, thank you so much, Geek Buzz. I was wondering, is the Infinity Gauntlet made to fit Thanos only? I think it was, because there was a mold, and it seemed like the mold was very specifically made to a Thanos-sized hand. So I am not basing this on anything but pure deduction, but I would deduce that, yes, it was made to fit Thanos' hand. I suppose if somebody else had the same size hand of Thanos, it would work with them too, but it seemed like the mold was made for Thanos. So I'm going to just guess at this point, yes. Terrify writes, I've seen Wreck-It Ralph 2 and Lego 2 get backlash because of the jokes made at the expense of men. Are these films trying too hard to promote girl power? No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. There was a joke about amongst the Disney princesses, and it wasn't against men, but it was saying, are you portrayed in such a way that you have to wait around for a big, strong man to come around and rescue you? Like, that's poking fun at the fact that women have been basically kept in this place. Women have been kept in their place, and it's a joke making fun of that, but it's the truth. So if anybody has a problem with that, they're the ones bringing politics into it, not the movie. So I think if anybody's getting triggered by that, I think they're tipping their hand that they've got a bit of an agenda. So I wouldn't pay any attention to them. And honestly, I haven't seen too much of that myself. So I don't think that it's a big problem. ZOMG Ruler writes, doubt you'll see toxic Star Wars fans at Star Wars Celebration. You should go. Oh, no, there will be toxic fans there. But, I mean, it's just again, I don't want to talk about it anymore, but if you ask, I will answer. I am just too disillusioned with the Star Wars fandom right now. So, I don't want to be there. I mean, it's as simple as that. It has just put me to a point that I don't want to be there. So, yeah, there's just that. Jericho Leon writes, the Force being a sentient being that requires no qualifications on the recipient. Sounds like the Christian doctrine of election. Reason I love The Last Jedi. You're right, there are similarities to that, and it just makes sense. I think more people should look into that. I'm glad you recognize that, Jericho. That's a nice actual comparison there. On many detail levels, that's a really nice comparison. Oliver Jamie writes, Hotel Artemis and John Wick possibly share the same universe. From what I understand, no, they do not. Act Naturally Productions. If the villain was written perfectly, which MCU villain would you like to see next? I simply don't care. I simply don't care. Because I don't know what movie they're doing next and which villain would best fit in there to make that story. It all depends. Like these questions about which villain we put in here. Well, that's putting the cart before the horse. Like, what does the story need? What kind of story do you want told here and blah, blah, blah. That's when you decide upon which, villain or character you want to put in here or not. And I think anything besides that is putting the cart before the horse. So it's fun if you want to speculate and come up with ideas and things like that. To me, that's something I kind of avoid doing most of the time. So honestly, I don't care as long as they write the villain, whatever villain they use, as long as they use the best villain for the stories they want to tell, and then they write that villain well, then I'm okay with any villain that they have. I'm perfectly happy with any villain they have at that point, if they do it right. All right, guys. That will do it. We are now all caught up with all of the chat questions that have come in, and that will wrap up today's installment of the companion video. Thanks so much for being here, guys. Don't forget, a little bit later this morning at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we've got the John Campea Show. We're going to be talking about that new Mortal Engines trailer. We're going to be talking about the Joker situation with Jared Leto. What does that mean for the Martin Scorsese Joker movie? We'll talk about that a little bit too. Make sure you come back and join me for that. Of course, I've got my review up right now for Jurassic World. Make sure you check that, or Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, I should say. Make sure you check that out. And of course, tomorrow at 2 o'clock, we've got our open mic. And at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, for those of you who are Patreon supporters and a member of the Patreon supporters Facebook group, we've got Star Wars talks coming. It normally would have been yesterday on Tuesday, but Jurassic World screening in the middle of the day kind of threw all that off. So we're going to do Star Wars talk as well. Make sure you come back for that. All right, guys, that'll do it for me. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until my next video, bye-bye.